18,000 men in each division. Hitler had saved up 25 divisions, and he was going to go, if you can picture the map of Europe, Germany, Belgium, Antwerp. Antwerp was the port of entry of our troops, our main equipment, food, ammunition, gasoline. And what they were going to do was move from Germany through Belgium, take the port of Antwerp, deny us our supplies and have it for themselves, gasoline, food, and so on. And it would have separated the British and Canadian armies that were in the north and the American armies in the south. It would have changed the war. The problem was to get from Germany to Antwerp. Right here, there was a little town called Bastogne. That town had to be taken if you wanted to get to Antwerp, because the terrain there in the Ardennes, excuse me, is impossible for tanks. They have to stay on the road. And to stay on the road, they had to go to Bastogne to get to Antwerp. And Eisenhower said to the 101st Airborne Division, get up there. And the division had just come out of Holland, 72 days of combat, beat up. 3,000 men lost, their food, their ammunition, they were supposed to get 90 days of rest, rehabilitation, replacements, and so on. 3 weeks after they had gotten there, all of a sudden, now I was a private, so the officers might have known more than we did, but all I know is the barracks lights come on. This is December 17th, and the sergeant comes in, hey, we're moving out. And we said, you're crazy, the ground is frozen, you'll all break our legs. He said, you're not jumping, you're going to go up in trucks. So all I could think of was all my airborne training, I'm going to make my first jump out of a truck, combat jump. But at any rate, we got up there one day before the Germans hit. Just enough time to set up a defense, and the rest of the stuff is, how do you answer the question that 12,000 men held off? By the way, we had no winter clothes, we had we didn't have a full supply of ammunition or food or anything. But as proven again and again and again in history, battles are not necessarily won by who has the most men, who has the most equipment, who has air cover. Well, we had none of those things. We were outnumbered 8-1. What wins a battle is what's in the heart of the individual soldier, who says, I don't give a damn what you throw at me, you're not getting by my foxhole. Bring your tanks, I'll get down in my hole, let them go by, throw a grenade at them in frustration, you can't do anything, you tank. But when your infantry comes in, big surprise. And that's what happened in that battle. That no matter what the hell they threw at us, the men held. And Patton and his army, we held from the 18th to the 26th. The 26th, Patton came in, and we had the highest casualty rating of any outfit in Europe. You can win a battle, but it costs. You got to pay the price for that kind of thing. I don't know what the figure was, but at the end of the Battle of the Buldge, the outfit that took the most casualty was the 501. My parachute infantry division. And we got the Presidential Unit citation for that battle because if you look at a map, the direction the Germans were coming from, that's where we were put. So we took the first attack, 25 German divisions coming into Bastogne. And then afterwards they surrounded us, they cut off the supply, they took the field hospital and so on. But the attitude there was, in fact, one guy is supposed to have said, "Oh yeah, they got us surrounded, the poor bastards." He felt sorry for them. He said, "Hey, paratroopers are supposed to be surrounded. What the hell? It's beautiful. You can shoot in any direction. You know it's the enemy. You don't have to worry about hurting your own people." And so, but
Coming here for years to talk to you about the airborne stuff.
there are other factors. That winter, they later told us, was the first winter, the worst winter that Europe had had in 20 years. When we got there, the temperature was down to zero, and it never went above. All the time that we were there, zero. Now, you know, we don't know this. Later on, they told us what the numbers were. All we know is, God damn it, it was cold. But the temperature went from 0, 10 below, 12 below. One night it was 18 below zero. Our rifle bolts froze. We couldn't find a damn gun. We had to piss on the bolt enough to loosen it to get the first shot, and then you better wipe it quick because that freezes too. Adding to that problem is that we didn't have any winter clothes. No overcoats, no gloves, no hats, the wool beanie and that. And before that battle, they took away our jump boots. The Army issued us what they called combat boots. Supposedly, they said jump boots are too much trouble to lace up in combat, and the people won't take their. But whatever the story was, they took away our jump boots, and they gave us what they called combat boots. It was a boot that you laced up halfway, and then a leather flap covered it with two buckles, which was supposed to be easier to put on and take off in combat. The problem was, jump boots are waterproof. In combat, even if you could put a little bacon grease or something on, you keep your feet dry. The combat boots had the leather turned the other way around. Once it got wet, it stayed wet. We lost more damn people to trench foot, frozen feet, and so on, as we did bullets. By not estimate, by actual count, when they figured out the casualties and so on. And so, that was another factor that accounted for our high casualty rate. Paratroops are very lightly armed. Rifles, machine guns, and bazookas. The new German Tiger Royal tanks, the bazookas used to bounce off. The armor plate on a new Tiger Royal and a Mark IV could take a 75 millimeter shell. Bazooka, they had over 1,000 tanks. We had 73. And that was from the armor division. And they had rockets introduced for the first time. Like the old Russian Katyusha rockets, a rocket. 16 tubes that fire 16 shells all at once. And when they land, the whole goddamn area is. And they had 220 millimeter of what they call rifles, field guns and so on. And they're German Air Force. We kept saying, where the hell is our Air Force? We were getting bombed, we were getting shelled, where the hell's our Air Force? We're supposed to have the best Air Force, the most pilots, the most this. Where the hell are they? The Germans are flying. What we found out later was that the weather in England was impossible. They couldn't get off the ground. They were ready to come and to supply us and such. Of course, we don't know that. All we do is curse them. Where the hell are you? So in the bitches. But the first 3 days, their first attack, we beat the living crap out of them. Went and sent them back. So then they slipped around and surrounded us, and that's when they captured the field hospital. all the beds, blankets, morphine, the equipment. They've got. They killed all the American personnel except for the doctors. They kept 5 of our doctors to serve in their army. One doctor and 1 Belgian nurse escaped into the town. In other words, that whole battle, that 8-day fight, our medical team was 1 doctor and 1 Belgian nurse, and only his own personal tools, surgeon's tools. And he had to operate with candles, light from the church. And they ran out of morphine. They took the ones that each of us had a pack. They came out and collected all of ours. We lost so many people because they couldn't get the medical attention. A guy, a wound that could have been cured if we had the doctors or something. Hey, that's the way it was in this fight. The only their artillery smacked the church and a seminary across the street from the church, which was stone buildings,
Yeah.
And they were still standing. The roofs were shut. And the only place we had to put the wounded was from on the floor of the church. And then whatever the doctor could do with his own instruments and surgery by candlelight. And like I said, we lost a lot of people because we didn't have proper medical. Now, in the midst of that kind of carnage, all kinds of killings of it, there's always something funny that happens. There's humor in certain things that you can laugh at later, and that's what we like to talk about afterwards. We don't want to talk about killing people. This funny thing happened, and I'm going to tell you one of them. The second day, after we were surrounded and cut off, and my foxhole buddy, sister machine gun, got hit in both legs. His name is Joe Willis. They took him back to the church. They put him on the floor of the church. And the next day, my sergeant sent me back to get the batteries for the radiators or something. So while I was back there, I went to look for my friend. And I see him laying on the floor of the church. I said, Joe, how you doing? Leg up there. I said, yeah, no kidding, really? He said, yeah, don't worry, I got it. And by the way, the story I'm all the medals I've got. He said to me, I said, I got to go back, Joe, thanks. I'll come see you again. I said, anything I can do for you before I leave? And he says, yeah, go find me something to drink. I said, Joe, where the hell am I going to find you something to drink? We're surrounded and cut up. There are no supplies, anything coming in here. He said, go look in the tavern. I told him, taverns are all bombed and shit. He said, go look anyway. You might get lucky. And hey, your foxhole buddy wants a drink. I'm gonna go find it for him. Even though it's a court-martial offense, it's snowing hard, not the kind of hit in your face. Artillery shells are landing all around the church and so on. I go slopping down the road looking for a tavern. And I first tavern I went into, all broken glass. There was nothing. Second tavern I went into still had a bar, and when I pulled on the beer handle, beer came out. And I said, oh. So I'm looking around for a bottle, or something to put the beer in, and there was nothing. I took off my helmet. The same helmet you shit in the foxhole, you know. I swished a little snow in it. I filled it up with beer. Went back to the church. Joe, I got some beer. He sits up, and I'm feeding him beer from the helmet. Hey, give me some of that. Hey, give me some of that. Hey, give me some. I was like an old mother cow there feeding all these guys a mouthful of beer. I ran out. Joe says, go get some more. Go get some more. I go down again. Took it down. I fill up the helmet with beer. As soon as I stepped out the door of the tavern, a shell landed nearby, knocked me down. I spilled most of it. But I wasn't hurt. So I got up, went back to the church, but this time, standing in the doorway of the church like this is the regimental surgeon, Major Walker. And you know, I'm a private. He said, what the hell do you think you're doing, soldier? I said, bringing aid and comfort to the wounded? He said, you stupid jackass, don't you know I got chest cases, stomach cases, you give him beer, you'll kill him? Get out of here before I have you shot. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then he says, and put that helmet on. But when you're already cold, to be wet and cold is even more miserable. But I ran like hell back to the foxhole before he changed his mind. Now, you know, an incident during the war. There are a lot of incidents during the war. I forgot all about that.
I think Emma's mom just called me. Who? Emma's mom just called me.
65 years later, when I went back to Bastogne for the first time, I meet this guy who was a Dutch paratrooper, and he said, you know, where have you been? We want to honor you. One of the first guys who did Bastogne or something like that. He said, who are you with? I said, H Company, 501. And he said, you know, he said, we studied the war, we teach it to our kids, we know where everybody, every day, who was stationed where. So he said, I can show you where H Company was dug in on both sides of the road. He said, yeah, you and your daughter and my daughter, get in the car. So I get in the car. He takes us out. Now, I recognize nothing, you know. During the war, everything was all covered with snow. There was no landscape. You couldn't see anything. Besides, your head was down in the foxhole most of the time. You didn't dare look up and look around. It would have gotten blown off. But he shows us the foxholes. And then he looks me in the eye like this. He said, and that one was your foxhole.
Oh, really?
I said, get the hell out of here. I could understand you knowing that H Company was dug in here. How the hell do you know that was my foxhole? He said, because your company commander, Captain Stanley, had a rough diagram on a piece of cardboard from a K ration of where he had put the automatic weapons. You were the only machine gun in the 3rd platoon, right? Yes, sir. Look, MG. Now, you got to picture this. You're 85 years old, and he said, where you're standing now, 72 years ago, you were a 19-year-old kid with a machine gun waiting for the first German attack. Everything that I had tried to forget about the war, it's all come back, hit me in the face like a cement block. I even heard the artillery going off again. And you know, at 85, you don't have a control. I fell apart. My daughter pulled me aside. She said, Martha, my father's seen enough. Let's go back.
I don't know. Does she get to
On
migraine
the way
every
back,
time after a show?
I invited the two men to lunch. I said, can I take you to lunch?
And then I tried to call back.
At lunch, I ordered 3 bottles of wine. I didn't like the mood I was in. I felt I wanted to change the mood and so on. So, you know, 3 soldiers and 3 bottles of wine, you know what's going to happen. We start talking loud and making it. We embarrassed my daughter. But they start telling stories. One of them tells the story of Marco was telling stories about Bosnia where he fought here. Johnny Boner talked about tanks and so on. And when it was my turn, I told him this beer story that I just told you. So while I'm telling them the story, they're going, "You? You were the GI who brought beer in a helmet to the..." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You went back to the church with a beer?" They said, "Man," they said, "don't you know you're famous in Europe?" I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" They said, "Waiter, come here. Bring us 4 bottles of Airborne beer." And the waiter comes back, and on a tray he's got 4 bottles of beer, 4 little ceramic bowls in the shape of a GI helmet that they serve it in. And the label on the bottle of beer shows an American paratrooper with a helmet full of beer going like this. Now you guys have cell phones. Google Airborne beer, and you'll hear the rest of the story.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Vince.